Welcome, everybody. We're on the podcast again. How's everybody?
We're back.
It's our weekly gathering.
You seem so enthused. Greg's in a bad mood today.
Very excited to be
We're
here.
going to have to fire Greg up. He's kind of, I don't know, dark today.
It's not dark. It's just...
What is it? Explain yourself, Greg.
Do we have to do...
What's wrong with you
This is not my
today?
therapy session on the podcast.
Why not? Why, we've tried everything else.
No, we haven't. No, it's Monday, and just a lot to do. That's it. I mean, that's it.
All right.
That's all I got.
Michael, you're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here.
You're supposed to be in a hospital somewhere this week.
Yeah, I know. I was.
What's up with this?
No longer as of right now, so we'll see.
Can I tell a funny
This
story?
week. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sitting down at lunch yesterday. I'm sitting...
This is ridiculous. We need to fight this out now. I've not said anything to you about this.
This was fantastic.
Ridiculous.
We were sitting at lunch yesterday, and we
I don't
happened
know
to be
where this is
sitting.
going.
Hang on, you'll find out. We're sitting down at
Life
lunch
360?
with Pastor Andy and Alexa,
great.
and we're all sitting down just eating lunch. And then
me
all
off.
of a sudden, they break out their phones, and their eyes get like big as saucers, and they're like, "Why is Michael at the hospital?" I'm like, I don't know. Is he really at the hospital? They're like zooming in on Life 360, and he's at the hospital. He didn't call us. And so all of a sudden they're trying to get a hold of you. And listen, he's already out the door. I don't even know if he's paid yet, but he's out the door.
I did pay.
and so they're like, we got to go. They're at the hospital having the baby. I don't know why he hasn't called us, but he's having a baby. And I'm still sitting at the table. We're getting ready to get up and leave. We're grabbing the girls and getting ready to walk out the door. And they walk back in. And, man, it is like this massive depression has hit. They're just touring the hospital.
They went on a Sunday afternoon, no explanation, no warning.
Well,
they go
we
to take a
didn't-
little tour. Could you have warned us?
We didn't tell. I didn't know you were going to be stalking my location.
We have stalked you 3 times a day for about a week now.
What was funny is I was with Becca and my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And I told them on the way, I was like, they've been looking at my Life 360 a lot, and I really hope they look right now.
Oh, they did.
And then as we got into the lobby, I saw Mom call me, and I showed them. I was like, they saw me.
They
saw me for sure. And, we were just going to tour the rooms, get a good feel for where we go.
I think it really was, after thinking about it, I think it really was just a little bit of payback that God was doing to him based off of the jokes that he was playing at the
Maybe that's
beginning of
it.
the message. You know, he kind of got everybody where, you like to see a picture of my grandbaby?
Yeah.
Well, I would too.
I have one
Oh.
regret. I wish I would have left that first call go to voicemail and maybe left it another 2
Can you
or
do
3
like the
minutes.
automated reply, call you back later?
yeah. And
Busy.
maybe waited another 2 to 3 minutes to call them back. But
Make fun of your helicopter parents. Go right ahead, guy who has a camera over the crib already.
Yeah,
with
that's true.
Breathing and heart monitors that'll
That's the new
alert
thing.
your phone.
That's the new
I
thing.
never knew that existed. You can basically put a monitor on your baby that
Oh yeah, that's the new
Comes
thing.
to your
Very
phone.
I don't think they
common.
had that when my kids were.
no, they didn't have it when mine were.
It's a new thing. Yeah.
So you guys, you all just kind of got an inside look at what it's like before we
Yeah.
hit record. We just had the conversation.
We went ahead. We're just tired today,
that's
so we
right.
just hit record.
Long
and
story
started.
short, I don't have a kid yet.
You got one. She's just
Well,
not
yes,
here
yet.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I don't have a kid out of womb.
So when is she coming? That's
I don't
the
know.
question.
We'll probably find out today.
I
Today.
bet when they're watching this right here, the baby's been born.
Really?
So
Okay. I don't think so.
I do. I think Wednesday's the day.
Okay.
That's 2 days from today.
That is my.
I think it'll probably be end of the week.
I think it's Wednesday.
But we'll see.
Wednesday's
I hope-
my day.
I hope you're right. I think
Well, I mean,
one would be the most.
I want you to
what's the
just
most convenient
go
day for this
today.
baby to come?
I
Today,
have.
right
I've
now.
said that many times. I was like, I really hope she comes this day through this day
Right
because
now.
it's the best timing.
No Thursday, no Sunday. That's my
Yeah.
request.
Or I'd go Thursday night after church. Would be
After
my
church.
pick.
But if you start up Sunday morning, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But she'll come when it's time.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Good day yesterday.
Yeah. It was
Oh man, great
Good day.
weekend. Great weekend.
Biggest
full day. Yeah.
biggest regular attendance for a regular Sunday we've ever had.
Really?
correct.
I
Yep.
saw that.
Yep.
It was
I
the
knew it
largest
was really big,
ever.
and I,
It was
I
a-
didn't see the total.
it was
just over 1,800 this
really,
weekend.
man.
Yeah.
What
Crazy.
kids would have been?
Kids were incredible this weekend. It was
That
so
was
much.
really good.
It was so much so that it overloaded our check-in
Yeah, our
system.
system. We
Our
had the
system went
hand
down.
right.
So
The last time we had that huge number a couple weeks back at the 10:15, I think our Thursday had been down. I think Halloween was that Thursday, and
that was a big
kind of
weekend.
down a little
Yep.
bit,
Yeah.
which
Yep.
will probably
Yep.
ignite some controversy out there. But
No,
Yeah.
we had a great
Few
weekend
people
with
weren't here
students.
that night.
Moving on.
Moving right
I'm trying.
on from
I'm trying.
that.
Had a great weekend with students this weekend. Had a
We were
great
here.
group of kids.
Yeah. Students was great. They had like 90. I think I was down there Thursday.
Kids' attendance was great this weekend. And man, listen, I mean, it just really is this thing of, man, God is doing some incredible things, and I mean, He's bringing people not just to Upward, but man, so many churches in our community that, man, we get a chance to hear about what God's doing there. I mean, it's really incredible to be a part of. And so, yeah, it's a powerful time.
So we're in this new series calling it Showdown. I thought it was pretty funny that we're talking about Showdown the day after Mike Tyson and Jake Paul had
The
this
epic
unbelievable
collapse and just horrible. It was like, it was terrible.
Yeah, that was nothing good. I didn't stay up for that.
Sure.
I went to bed.
Maybe I should have made the graphic boxing theme. I thought about it, but we've done
We
that
tried that
before.
once
We've done it before. We will not talk. We do not talk about
Yeah, we're
that.
getting
All right,
into
we
that.
don't talk
Little
about. Look,
trauma.
no.
Greg had some
keep moving.
trauma
Keep moving.
left over from that.
Please keep
We're
moving.
getting into all sorts.
Yeah,
of
let's not do
things.
this. I'm not prepared.
Anyway,
for this
it's a showdown 3,000 years ago, pretty much, on a mountain. There's a mountain range, the Carmel Mountains there in Israel, and it's over in the northern part, kind of overlooking the Mediterranean there to the west. And it's up close to the northern border of Israel, which connected them with the other nations of idol worship there, and so it's an interesting place. But about 3,000 years ago, Elijah called them all up to the mountain on Mount Carmel and said, let's see who's really God. Is it God or is it Baal? And so we started launching into that this week, and it's just one of these times when God is saying, put me to the test. He says that with like giving.
Right.
Yeah. Put me to the test and see. And it's one of those occasions when there's just an invitation of God, show up and show us who you are.
Right.
And he does, and he did mightily. We didn't get into the victory. We will next Sunday. But it was the lead up to it that there was a test as well. Elijah comes out and says to the evil king Ahab, it's not going to rain until I say so. And Baal was the god of rain and fertility. And so it was a real challenge to Baal there. And it was a moment when God just lays it out there for you and says, I am who I said I am.
Right.
So it's this incredible moment for people to look at it. And the verse we kind of launched from yesterday was Elijah just said, how long will you limp between two opinions? Decide who's God and follow him. And that's kind of the message here.
I mean, that's kind of it was the message then, but it's the question that we have to wrestle with and answer today as well. It's the most important decision that any of us are ever going to make is who's going to be God in our lives. You talked about the ability to be able to have the God of the universe, the Creator, to be your God, and then we have these other little false gods that we allow to creep into our lives if we're not careful. That'll take priority and take ownership, and we have to make that choice. We have to make that decision, much like was being talked about here about who we're going to serve, who we're going to follow.
Yeah, and Ahab just messed it up. Ahab's story is such a terrible story. He was almost no good from the start, but Ahab just kept getting worse all the time. The Bible says things about him that are just so blunt and so bad.
Yeah.
It says Ahab did more evil than any king before him. And there was some
just pause
evil
there
before.
for just take that statement right there. I mean, that's an incredible statement.
Yeah. And then Ahab, it said, provoke the Lord. We would say ticked him off. The Lord, he did more to provoke God than anybody else yet. It's amazing to me that God's still reaching out to Ahab with mercy. This whole challenge on Carmel and the whole drought thing, it's so easy to see a storm as God's punishment. But what God was doing in this drought coming through was to just expose the false god for who he really wasn't, I guess you would say. And the storm was not a punishment. It was God getting attention there, getting Ahab and the nations hopefully attention that they were following something that could not deliver. And God does that in his mercy. I'm so thankful. We've all had storms in our lives that came in and hurt a lot, and I've had many of them myself, and it was a lot of it was my own fault, my own consequence, for what I'd done. But those are opportunities to just really get your eyes open to truth.
Yeah.
It leads into one of the statements that you talked about, some of the mistakes that Ahab made, and you mentioned that one of them is that he didn't take responsibility for his own actions, and then you just kind of were mentioning about how recognizing that God brings about some storms, oftentimes through His mercy, and to kind of help bring some course correction. Oftentimes, man, I just feel like we live in a society, and it's not just now. I mean, it seems to be that way forever, where people are just unwilling, myself included, to take responsibility for our own actions, and want to find somebody to blame, want to find somebody who's at fault that caused my life to turn out this way. It just seems to be a constant complaining session that we can oftentimes hear, just finding other people and other circumstances to blame, other than recognizing our own responsibility in the midst of a situation.
Yeah, I mean, Ahab's there, and 3.5 years of famine had gone by, or drought, and leading to a famine.
Right.
I mean, you imagine 3.5 years with no rain. That's a bad situation, right?
Yeah, we just
there.
went through like a month of it with no
it's
rain.
terrible. And so, so Elijah walks in, and Ahab's there. It's like, there comes the troublemaker in Israel. In other words, here comes the guy that it's all his fault.
Right.
And Elijah did say that's what it's going to be, but the problem was Ahab's idolatry, not
Right.
Elijah's prophecy, and Ahab did not get on the solution side of this at all. Blaming is never a solution. I can blame someone for what they did to me, and part of it's true.
Sure.
There are bad things that people do to us that push us in a certain direction, and people are responsible for evil in our lives,
Oh, yeah.
They are. Others' hurt starts piling up, and we can do stupid things coming out of that hurt and sinful things with that hurt, And so people do have a degree of responsibility. Elijah did not in this case, but there are some real times when a lot of our problems are exacerbated, or pressured by other people's wrongs. But what I've come to understand is I can't solve what they did to me. I can only decide what I'm going to do with this right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can only decide what I'm going to do with this when I take responsibility for my own life.
Yeah. And sitting on your hands and sitting back and blaming somebody else is never the answer, regardless of anything.
No, I think many times it's important to unpack your wounds and your things like that, and to actually face the people that did these things to you, and forgive them, actually deal with it.
Right.
And again, long subject, but it's
Right.
not letting them off the hook. It's not fellowshipping with them again. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
having them in your life. It's just dealing with the pain that's in your heart toward them and releasing that out of your heart and releasing them and the bitterness out of your heart. So you got to process that, but ultimately all of us have to understand that we are responsible for our own lives, and our choices are what impacts our destinies, not what people did to us. No matter how hard you've been hit or knocked down, you can always get up and make a choice to be future focused. Ahab just didn't do it.
And we recognize the difficulty in that with certain
Sure
things
is.
that happen. I mean, nobody's up here proclaiming that this is easy.
No
You know?
way. No
I mean,
way.
it'd be a whole lot easier to continue to be in that place. But then we have to evaluate our lives and say, where do we want to be in another 5 years? Where do I want to be in another 10 years? Do I want to still be sitting in the same place, going through the same cycle of emotions and feelings and thoughts? Or do I want to do what you're doing, what you're saying? Take the opportunity, process everything that's going on,
Yeah.
deal with it in a healthy manner so that we can move forward. And, I look at it this way, with the age that my girls are at right now, what do I want to model for them right now? They're at a stage right now where they're looking at my life, and they're beginning to make some, life choices, even at, 12 and 10. I mean, they're developing patterns that will follow them. So what am I modeling in front of them? How do I want them to lead or live? And how do I want my life to influence them?
There's some deep hurts and deep dark hurts that happen to people. Let's just say the abuse of a child that they are absolutely not responsible for. They have zero responsibility in it. They were the victim, and the other person was the perpetrator, the victimizer. And even in that situation, you have no responsibility in the hurt. But even then, if you focus all your attention on hating that person and just replaying in your mind your hatred towards them and bitterness, it can just lead you down to a dark hole that you can never get out of. You You have to release that out of your heart. Sometimes it takes years and years, and it takes time. It's a process of God healing somebody from something like that. But you do have to stay future focused and say, yeah, this happened to me, but I am responsible for moving forward with my life, you know.
Yeah.
So Ahab just didn't do that.
Yeah.
He just blamed everything on the prophet there.
He also looked at the truth teller and called him a troublemaker.
Yeah, I said that. Society's in decline when we call our truth tellers troublemakers.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. Now, I know people, the balance of that is, I know people who spew out facts without a heart of love, and they're just jerks. You know, they may have the facts right, but they don't have the heart right. That's why the Bible says we're to speak the truth in love. Mm-hmm. We're to speak truth, and there's to be no question about what we're speaking. It's not a lie, that it's factual, but that it also has a heart for the hearer, for the person we're speaking to. You know, but we have a tendency. I've had it in the past when someone confronted me on something to see them as trouble. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need that truth. Many times you got to have that truth teller in your life. You really do. You need somebody who can stand up to you. If all the people in your life who you claim have had the greatest influence over your life are people who've never corrected you, you're probably in a tough situation. You're probably headed down a road. You're in the, this cliched, but you're in the echo chamber of surrounding yourself with people who tell you how great you are and what you want to hear. You need people who can challenge your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We talk, kind of what looks like that on a personal level is we talk about everybody on staff having an accountability partner. That's somebody that can ask you tough questions, somebody that will poke and prod to make sure that everything's going well in your life, so that you're not surrounding yourself with somebody that just always gives you the yes or always just tells you what you want to hear. And if you don't have somebody in your life that you've given permission to ask those tough questions to, or somebody who has the opportunity to tell you, no, you're being an idiot, stop doing that, you're setting yourself up for some kind of failure in the future.
Here's the danger in leadership, and it's not just the church, it's in the organizations and business and everything else. The higher you go up the org chart, the less people there typically are who will call you out on something.
Yeah.
You tend to get more and more people who will tell you what you want to hear because you're their boss.
Right.
And, and it's so hard. The higher you go, the harder it is to get honest feedback. It really is.
Yeah.
And this would have been true for Ahab, I'm sure. The kings in those days.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure from Ahab's track record, he didn't have a lot of people coming in saying, hey, you're wrong on this. Mm-hmm. Guarantee you. I mean, his wife was killing prophets right and left at this very point. So don't shoot the truth tellers.
Yeah. Right. I like to think of it as like humility is a big part of that, but also like learning to be okay with being offended, because it's like in order for any new idea or any new concept to enter kind of your mind, you have to risk that it's going to offend you. And sometimes you take that word and take it to its most extreme of everybody getting pressed and offended at everything. But you have to learn internally, like when somebody says something to you that's a new idea or it's a new way of doing something that you might think is wrong, that has an inherent quality that will offend you. And I mean that literally, like it will offend your idea of the way to do something. But when you learn to be okay with that feeling and learn to say, listen, I know that this is pressing up against what I believe, but that's actually a good thing. Right. Because a lot of times there's two outcomes. You're going to go with the new idea and you realize your preconceived notion of how to do something was wrong, and now you've got the better way. Or even if you were right at first, and the new idea just challenged you and it actually just made your opinion stronger on the way you think something should be done. But learning to be okay with somebody offending you, obviously in a somewhat righteous way, don't go out and offend people just intentionally, but with your people around you that are in that position, learning to be okay with being a little offended at some ideas and really evaluating your own ideas versus theirs.
You've got to be able to handle the discomfort of someone disagreeing with you.
Yeah. Sure.
And the thing that I see a lot is people are just a little, maybe I've watched too many videos about this, but it seems like people are just so on edge and just ready to fight over just
anything.
a simple disagreement. And we all, including Christians, including us, the internet's made it possible for us to find our tribe that agree with us on mostly everything. I guarantee you, on, let's say the news.
Yep.
Any of us here, no matter where we are on the political spectrum or whatever, we can find somewhere on the internet a news outlet that's sees the world just as we do.
Yep.
And the more we watch of it, it just reinforces what we think and what we think and what we think. And that's true on the right or the left or wherever you are. We need to be able to step out sometimes and hear from people who don't agree with us. Like you said, sometimes that just reinforces my belief. But at least I've got a perspective on where they're coming from, you know?
And you got to be able to do it without just getting ticked off and hating somebody.
Said this many times from the pulpit. We, instead of lobbing grenades at the other side, let's try to talk to the other side and listen to the other side and learn from the other side, you know. And doesn't mean I compromise what I believe, but it's so important as I move forward with what I believe to keep my ear open to how other people are seeing that and how they're receiving it. It's one of the real challenges to be a preacher or any type of communicator in our day is people are so divided, and one of the challenges is to keep your mind open to how what you say is being received by certain people, and not watering down the message, but just trying to think through the best way to communicate your idea, your thought, what you believe to them in a way that gives them every chance of receiving it.
I was like the end. This is a different story, but like the end of Daniel, the chapter where he's thrown into the lion's den, very famous scripture, obviously. Nebuchadnezzar who's the king at that time. Nebuchadnezzar pulls him out and realizes that his God is really in control. And he says that at the end. He says, you know, the God of Daniel is the true God. This nation is going to worship him, and whoever doesn't worship him is going to get killed. And it's like, and a lot of people at the end are like pumping their fists for Nebuchadnezzar, like, yeah, he finally got it. But the next chapter is like where he's basically forced to live like a cow for for years because he still didn't get it. And that's an example of like when Daniel survived the lion's den, he finally got who the true God was. But what he hadn't got is like the true heart of God, which is not to just kill everybody that doesn't agree with
people's throats.
Yeah, exactly. And God forced that out of him in a brutal way. But that's a good example of like you can't just have the knowledge and the facts without the heart behind it.
Yep. Last idea, I guess, is Ahab listened to the wrong people.
Right.
Yeah.
Big part of his failure. Who had his ear? You know, he kicked out the truth tellers, and it seems the person that had his ear most was his wife Jezebel, who was just like a witchcraft, demonically possessed woman. That's the only way you could think about it. There's a story, and we won't tell in this series. It's a powerful story. Ahab had a neighbor named Naboth. I think this was in Jezreel. And Naboth had a vineyard right next door to Ahab's house, and Ahab asked to buy it from him. And Naboth said, no, this is my family's home for generations. I won't sell it to you. So Ahab goes home and pouts like a child. It's like he threw himself on the bed and threw a temper tantrum if you read it. Jezebel comes along, basically says, I'll get it for you. So they throw this big feast, have Naboth there, and then she brings legal witnesses against him that he's cursed Ahab and God. And they kill Naboth.
Right.
And then Jezebel's like, okay, go get your vineyard, you big baby. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's like this horrible person, Jezebel, just manipulated Ahab to give him what he wanted, to murder people. She was using him for power. It's almost like she was running the nation more than he was behind the scenes. You know, demonic power was running the nation through him, you know, because he listened to the wrong people. And it's just critical for our lives. We got to get the wrong voices out of our head and out of our hearts.
Right.
You know, I see people, you know, sometimes I'll just use this for an example. You'll see people who are having marriage problems, you know, and one of them will go to some friends who encourage them just to give it up.
Right.
You know, it could be the guy or the girl or whoever, and they just like, oh, just move on. And I've seen people walk away from marriage and children, and sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you got to get out of a relation. I understand that. This is not a template for everybody's life. But I've just seen people walk away from savable situations with their spouse and their children because friends just surrounded them and said, hey, let's go party. Let's go find somebody else. And it's just the wrong people had their ear.
A lot of times we're taking wisdom from people who aren't necessarily living the lifestyle that we want to live, right?
Totally.
I was reading something the other day, and it was like it was talking about criticism and really focusing in on the idea of, why would you receive criticism from somebody you wouldn't really take their advice from? And it's this, just the whole idea of, who are the people that you're listening to? If I want to, I want to have a great marriage, so I'm going to seek counsel from somebody who has a great marriage, right? I want to raise godly children, so I want to get advice and counsel from somebody who's ahead of me, who has raised godly children, and who are still serving Christ at this point in time. So I mean, I'm gonna look around at who I'm who's speaking into my life based upon the fruit of their life.
Yeah, I'm not taking marriage advice from someone who's been married 16 times. I'm not taking financial advice from people who are broke.
Right.
I'm not taking business advice to people who've never built anything. That's not to be arrogant. It's just to say exactly. You said it better than I could. When you get advice, find out is the person already living the life you want to live. So get those right voices in and shut out the wrong ones. And you really have to do a lot to shut out the wrong voices. We talked in the services this weekend about just closing the door on demonic influences in your life. I'm amazed at how many people are just superstitious, and people laugh when I start talking about it. People laugh, but I remember coming here 30 years ago almost, and just having a conversation with a lot of people about superstition. Up here in the mountains, there are some superstitions.
Sure.
I love mountain people. I guess I am one.
Are
at
you
this
one
point.
now?
I would guess I am. I'm as close as you get from a Winston-Salem boy coming here, but there were a lot of superstitions, and I would talk to people and say, hey, that's not right. Well, I believe this and I believe that. And I remember that God just spoke this to me 30 years ago. So anytime you acknowledge a power over you that's not me, you give that power over your life, black cat or a ladder. It may seem fun and harmless and everything, but what you're actually doing is saying something controls my destiny other than God.
Right.
And it's important to recognize and give him the power, because superstition is idolatry at its heart.
Yep. Which was good. I've heard so many comments about you having the boldness to step out and speak on some of that right there, and then challenging us to let's take authority. Let's take the spiritual authority that God's given us. Let's take authority over these things.
Next week we're going to jump into the actual battle up on Mount Carmel, the showdown where they built altars to God and altars to Baal, and see what happens. Most of our audience probably knows what happened already, but it's going to be fun. We're going to unpack that in some really cool ways.
That's great. Looking forward to it.
Yep. We'll see y'all next time. See if Michael's here next week. We'll just see.
See ya.
Hopefully
Bye-bye.
He's back here, had a baby already,
We'll
and
see.
he's back, but we'll see.
You never know.
See y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.